Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Moonstrats. This week I'm going to be covering a no DLC blue-yellow tempo deck, and this is one of the more topper tier decks, I would say, at least in a tournament setting. Tempo is typically a style of deck where you're trying to play a card each turn, making efficient use of your Faeria, and the idea kind of is to just apply constant pressure to the board just so that your opponent never has a chance to breathe, and then that momentum swing that you gain from all of those plays should carry you to the win. So this deck has a lot of solid bodies and efficient costing creatures that just allows you to constantly drop them down on the board and keep maintaining that tempo swing. So Ancient Herald is one of those creatures and is very efficient with its Faeria cost. So when you play this creature, the next creature that you draw with 5 life or more costs 2 less. So in a sense, it effectively makes this a 4 cost 5/6, which is incredibly good value. You do have to keep in mind that this effect doesn't happen until you draw that creature and play that creature down, this next creature here. So always keep that in mind when you're playing these. You want to get these out as early as possible to make sure you're gaining this benefit, because otherwise you're just playing a 6 cost 5/6 that very turn you play it, and then you've kind of got to wait until that next creature gets played in order to keep that value going. And then of course we've got Mystic Beast and Colossus as well. So if you've seen my mono blue jump guide, you'll know what these creatures are already. Wave Crash Colossus is a card that gets discounted every time you harvest from an enemy well, and Mystic Beast is a card that gains stats when he's summoned on an adjacent enemy well. So this style of deck plays similarly to Blue Jump because you want to push your lands sort of in the same formation and try and get up to your opponent's wells to take advantage of these two cards, and just applying large amounts of pressure with these beefy bodies as well. Toe Ship is another very solid card. It's got dash 1 and it pulls its land along with it. So dash means that once the turn you drop it, you get to move it 1 tile if you choose. And then it'll tug its land alongside with it. So Toe Ship is very good at pushing up aggressive lands and getting a Mystic Beast spot even faster. It's also great at dashing into a double collection spot very early on in the game. Another card is Oasis Explorer. So this card gains +1/+1 while you control 2 lakes, and +1/+1 while you control 2 deserts. So this isn't a gift effect. It will give it the buff even if it's on the board or if it's in your deck, regardless. And this is quite the powerful card. When I talk about card alternatives later, definitely don't underestimate this card if you want to sub something out for a different creature, because the 4 cost 5/5, that's just solid stats there for the cost, but also the fact that it's a neutral creature can be quite important sometimes. It just means that it can be played on any land, so you don't need to worry about placing them on lakes or deserts. You can even use double neutral to push this up into an aggressive spot or an in-between-the-well spot. So this card all around just has some really good perks to it. Also, the fact that it has no land requirement means that if you have the Explorer going second, you can play this on turn 1. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Kaleem's Training and Origin Fanatic, these are quite nice cards that just offer ways to push your creatures very quickly towards your opponent's wells and their orb, which again is what this deck is trying to do: get to your opponent's wells, get to the orb very quickly, put on that pressure. So all of this mobility here is very effective at doing that. Another good thing to note is that any of these mobility tricks will also sort of synergize with Toe Ship and also move its land along. So, for example, if you use Kaleem's Training on a Toe Ship, you'll give it charge 2, and wherever this tow ship charges to, it will keep its land with it, even if it moves over top of another land. So if you've got tow ship's land and there's a land blocking you, but then there's an open lake tile on the other spot, if you charge past that land, as long as tow ship ends up on a lake, it will keep its original land with it and pull it along with it. And then Wind Soldier, this is just a staple yellow card. Having haste and charge 3 effectively makes it a 3 cost 3 damage, but also the fact that it's a creature means that it can harvest off the wells as well, so you can gain a lot of Faeria back while it's charging across the map. And then the other part about this deck that's kind of interesting is this Humbling Vision slot. So this slot of 3 cards here is kind of a flex spot, depending on the ladder, the current ladder, what decks you're facing, or even just your playstyle, cards you prefer. These 3 cards are very nicely interchangeable, and I'll talk a lot more about that in the alternative card section, but this is a nice slot for some flex cards. So far, I just have Humbling Vision in it. So you've also seen this in my blue jump guide. You have a creature's base attack and life rounded down. So this is great at taking down more larger creatures. It also helps to let you make good trades. So if you drop the attack of a creature, your creatures can trade into it and sustain their life. Another interesting thing to note about Humbling Vision is that it's rounded down, the attack and life. So if they have 1 life, it will destroy that creature. It's not the most efficient form of removal, 3 Faeria to deal 1 damage, but it is always an option if that's something you want to do. So for the Mulligan, we've got 3 sets of starting creatures. We've got Oasis Explorer, Ancient Herald, and Tow Ship. So you'll always want to do a full mulligan trying to get one of these creatures. Technically, Fanatic is a starting creature. You can play it on turn 2, but I would toss this if you don't have any other creatures. For the other 2 cards, when you're doing a mulligan, there's quite a few options you can take. And really the only cards that I wouldn't keep here would be Mystic Beast, Colossus, and Humbling Vision. These 3 I would toss. Also, if you have 3 creatures in your starting hand, I'd probably toss one of those for sure. But any other card here works quite well, as long as you have at least 1 starting creature. Having like a mobility trick in your opening hand, especially Kaleem's Training early, is very nice to have. Even a removal spell like Soul Drain. And always a second starting creature can be quite nice as well. Just means that if one gets answered, you've got a second one to drop. So let's talk about the card alternatives. Like I said, with this particular slot here, you can interchange these 3 cards with a lot of different options, and I'll give those options right now. So one of them is Barter, and I've talked about this card in guides before. I really like this card. It lets you discover an event from your opponent's deck, which means you get a choice of 3 cards, and then you get to pick one of them to add to your hand, becomes wild, and costs 2 less. So this one, to me, is quite nice in the deck because it can offer you other forms of removal. Like, if you're playing against red, you get access to Flame Burst, Cypher's Wrath. You know, pick whichever one that best suits your needs in the current situation. If you're playing against green, you get some powerful buffs. Just lets your already pretty nice statted creatures fight those big green creatures. So Barter's a really nice card for me. Another one is Spirit Theft. So this one does drain 1 life from an enemy creature, so it just essentially means you get to heal 1 damage. And if you kill it, you get to add a copy of it to your hand. It becomes wild. So this is really nice because you can steal your opponent's creatures with this card. do keep in mind that the land, like, it will become wild, but the land cost remains. So if you're trying to spirit theft, say, a frog tosser, which is a 6 land cost, you won't be able to play it unless you build up 6 lands, which can sometimes be worth it. Frog tosser is quite a powerful card, but just keep that in mind when you're spirit thefting. The land requirements will be wild, but the number still stays the same. And this can give you some extra deck weight as well, which is interesting. I find the deck generally has enough stuff to play, but sometimes it can be nice just to have extra stuff to play. And then you don't have to worry about drawing as much. You can instead be plus oneing to play these creatures that you're gaining down. Another card you could consider is Choking Sand. I'd probably only run one of these. So if you wanted to run this, I'd cut down 2 Humbling Vision and add in 1 Choking Sand. So you get to destroy a creature with 3 attack or less. This is a very efficient removal a lot of the time, but you do need that 3 attack target. So sometimes this can be a dead card in your hand, but depending on what you're facing on ladder, if you're facing a lot of 3 attack creatures, then for sure this is a great card to use. There are some cards in neutral, so Falcon Dive is even a consideration in this list. Spirit Theft, as I talked about just now, is a DLC card, so if you don't have the DLC, you might consider running Falcon Dive instead. And even if you have Spirit Theft, sometimes Falcon Dive can be better in some situations, because Spirit Theft is a little bit land pricey. You need 4 lands to play it. And this being a tempo deck, you want to be gaining as much early game advantage as you possibly can. So if you can get like a 1 damage ping off early game that sets your opponent back a collector or something like that, this can be very powerful and just lets you tempo out a lot quicker, since you don't need any lands at all to play this. Can play it right off the bat. A similar card to this is Emperor's Command, and this was used again in Blue Jump. So you get to give a target creature -2/-1, so essentially doing the same job as Falcon Dive, but it does cost 1 more. This can help make efficient trades with your creatures, just like the Humbling Vision does. So if you're reducing that attack, you can let your creatures survive with more life. And then the 4 life is another consideration if you are facing a lot of burn on ladder. I think this is a very nice card to tech in. Soul Drains sometimes aren't enough to withstand burn, so Emperor's Command can help you with there. So all of those cards that I just talked about there, like I said, that's kind of this flex spot here with Humbling Vision. So you can substitute all of those cards for this slot quite effectively, just depending on your playstyle and depending on what you're seeing on ladder. In terms of creatures, there are a few that you can choose to use. One is Glide Hopper. So this can be quite the powerful card because it's got flying and jump, which just gives it so much flexibility on where to go on the map. You can drop it on your center tile right above your face, and it just allows it to choose to go right side, left side, doesn't even need the lands to do it, and it's always in a double collecting position with that jump. It's the same sort of cost as Tow Ship. In my opinion, I think Tow Ship's a little better, but you might consider running Glide Hopper over Tow Ship. Play around with it, see how you feel. It does have 4 life only, which can be a little bit anti-synergy with the Ancient Herald, since it needs 5 life creatures. But it's certainly a good card to consider including. Other cards, Shaitan Demon is a decent card. So this is a really tempo card on its own. 3 cost, 5/4 is very solid stats for the Faeria cost. This production that deals 2 damage to yourself doesn't really matter so much. you're usually trading this creature off or hitting into face so much that this means nothing to you. And having so much mobility with training and Fanatic, even if this gets played in a more defensive position and you get into a position where you have no way to trade this off, drawing into these mobility tricks just lets you push it up to face quicker or push it into a trading position quicker. So this is a really nice card to use. Again, 4 life, so remember to consider that. You want to keep as much 5 life creatures as possible for these heralds to trigger. And other ones that you may want to consider, these are less viable options, but Triton Warrior is reasonable. Another one is Tyrannax, which again is okay. It's got a 6 life stat, so it will synergize with Herald. And the thing that's good about this card is that it's only 1 lake, so you can play it on turn 1 if you have the Explore. You can go Explore Lake and then play this Tyrannax. So it's nice for that, and it's a reasonable stat line for the cost. Definitely could be a card that you want to consider, especially if you don't have all these cards and you're a new player building up your collection. This can be a good option to include in the meantime. So when you're considering all of these cards, keep in mind the things that I said before. So Oasis Explorer might be better than you think. Being a neutral creature is quite powerful, allowing you to place it on neutrals or special lands. But that's going to be pretty much it for card alternatives. So let's get into land placement. Alright, so this deck plays very similarly to Blue Jump. I would always start with a desert center here instead of the lake, like before. And then from here, you're trying to extend to one particular side of the wells, and then go up here, and try to get this as your Mystic Beast spot, or this one here. Even this one sometimes. But you want to try and get these aggressive lands as well. Trying to apply that constant pressure to your opponent's face, so they don't have room to breathe, and they've got to deal with it, and maybe make inefficient trades for themselves, just to try and save themselves from taking too much damage. So I play a desert here center because this is kind of a nice spot for wind soldier lines in the future. If your opponent does tend to get down towards your face, you'll be able to drop this wind soldier here and choose which side to go down to fight stuff. Even setting up a collection spot here if they come to this spot or something, at least you're threatening this very nice wind soldier line here. Another spot for this is for Fanatics to come down, because when Fanatic is dropped here, it allows it again to choose to hop between one of these sides of the wells for easy collection. And then this also opens up a turn 2 Soul Drain, or Choking Sand if that's what you're running. So that can be quite nice to set up as well. Generally, you want to try and place a lake as your second land, and then a desert as your third. And this is just because, again, this is a really nice Wind Soldier spot to have, really nice Fanatic spot as well. Again, just because it's on the wells. So if this is a Wind Soldier spot also, it opens up a potential line for a double collect spot, which presents like a 1 Faeria 3 damage with that Wind Soldier. So that's very nice to have. And then again, Fanatics just allows it to hop between both of the wells when it gets played here. This deck can also be quite efficient at using double neutrals, because it does have that, it only has a 4 land requirement, so it's very quick already to get up to those lands. So sometimes you can use double neutrals in certain spots to push up even more aggressive onto your opponent's wells. So like any deck, you only want to build the amount of lands that are required, and one of those lakes in your requirement is going to have to come onto this aggressive spot here. So keep that in mind. You can make use of double neutrals to get up aggressive to your opponent's wells as well. So for your opening hand, I would always prioritize playing Ancient Herald if you do have that in your opening hand. That would allow you to go desert, lake, drop that Herald, and that's a really nice line to see. But in this case, we've got an Oasis Explorer. So we're going to be playing this one first, regardless. So one thing to consider with this Explorer in your opening hand, if you do place that lake second, let's pass the turn here, he will still only be a 3-3 once you place that lake down. So if I put my lake down, place my Explorer, it's only going to be a 3-3 body. And this can be a little bit spooky against some colors, red being one of the prime examples because of Flame Burst. So Flame Burst does 3 damage, and this is quite the easy target for it. So in this particular case, I may want to consider going with a Desert instead. And I don't get that really nice Wind Soldier spot, but that's okay. I really want to play around Flame Burst in this situation to preserve this life stat. And the only other cards that you really need to concern yourself with is maybe Choking Sand. So if they are playing yellow, Choking Sand can kill this. And then the other option could be like double Deepwood Stalker. And to play around those particular cards, you may again want to consider placing a second Desert. Double Deepwood Stalker, of course, can kill this regardless, even if it has 4/4 stats with that double Desert. But they will, Oasis Explorer will trade off with those 2 Stalkers. So it's very inefficient for your opponent to do that play. But if the Stalkers get to survive, then it's quite nice for your opponent. But Choking Sand and double Deepwood Stalker aren't seen a lot, so it can sometimes just be worth the risk to place this lake and the Explorer at a 3-3. It really depends how much you want to risk it. Against red, I would say definitely place a Desert and not leave yourself open as a 3-3. Going second with the Explorer is kind of nice because it gives you a potential turn 1 play. So you can go Desert, Explore, Explorer on turn 1. But again, as I just talked about, you may not want to be playing this 3-3 body down right away on turn 1 to play around certain cards, such as Flame Burst from red. So you may want to hang on to this turn 1 play instead of playing it down, because you have the ability to buff it later on. It can be beneficial to not play this down right away. So just holding until the next turn, then you can explore Desert, and then drop this Explorer down as a 4/4 body, and then even then, you're still setting up your correct lands. All you're doing is missing out on 1 collection, which is completely fine to me. Even holding this in your hand allows you to pick which side you want to go down, so it can be quite the strong play. So when you are deciding which side you want to go down to, this can be a little bit different from the mono blue jump deck. I know I've been making a lot of comparisons there, but because this deck does have a lot of solid stat lines, you don't always want to go down to the opposite side. You do want to get that Mystic Beast spot and the collection discounts off of Colossus and everything, but sometimes you might have a particular hand in a particular matchup that you feel you can fight the same side and win in the fight. And this can be a little bit risky to do, but if you do have the confidence that you can beat them in a fight, assuming they go down the same side as you and don't switch sides, then this can be quite the payoff of a risk. And this decision does come with a little bit of experience, so if you aren't super confident about going the same side that your opponent's going down, then I would definitely recommend just go the opposite side, and you should have a good time there anyways. The other thing also is that while you're going same side, if you don't manage to collect so much off of this well, or if you're struggling to set up aggressive lands here, you do have cards that let you go to the opposite side, like Tow Ship, which can dash over to the other side very easily, Fanatic, Training. There's a lot of options that allow you to switch sides if things get a little tricky in the mid-game. But yeah, just when you're making this decision, keep in mind what cards they may have. So he's playing a red deck right now, So remember that there are many combat creatures, so you may not want to hit into those red creatures. Same as if you were playing like green, very big beefy creatures and lots of buffs that are just hand tricks in hand that can really have good swings on your creatures. So you may want to go to the opposite side against those particular decks. But maybe decks like blue or yellow, depends what kind of yellow deck they're playing. If they're playing flyers, flyers have a lot of creatures that can trade very efficiently into your creatures because they've got a lot of 5 attack stats and your creatures have a lot of 5 life stats, and their creatures tend to be a little more efficient. So against the yellow flyers, you may want to go opposite side. Against like some other type of yellow deck, you may consider going down the same side. But again, just takes a little bit of experience to know which side to go down. So once you've decided which side you want to go down, you start building your lands up aggressive, like I said earlier. But it may not always be the play to push straight up like this. Sometimes it's good to tuck in between the wells so that you can main a double collection. Unlike the mono blue deck from before, most of your creatures don't have jump, so they're unable to jump between the wells like the blue creatures are. So the only way that they can double collect is when they're in this spot, right in between the wells. So sometimes you may want to do that. Build your lands and put your creatures in between the wells. And having Toe Ship in our starting hand is quite nice. It's quite the nice example of getting into double collection very early on. So in this situation, I'm against probably a mono green deck or something like that, maybe a green blue, but it's pretty likely that he has buffs and big creatures, so I'm not feeling confident at all that I can fight this side. So I'm going to go to the opposite side with an Explorer, Lake, Toe Ship, and then from here I can dash right in between the wells. And from this position as well, I get to collect next turn from this well, step up, double collect, and then I can drop a lake here, and I've already got my Mystic Beast spot on turn 3. So this is quite the powerful play. Other things that you can consider is that if you do have Kaleem's Training in your opening hand, this can potentially give you an even more aggressive land if I had chosen not to dash here. So if I had just stayed here, I can right-click, cancel the dash, and then on my next turn, well, I won't be able to get to the aggressive lake right away, because I will have to build my second desert for training. But I can do that, and then I get a more aggressive line to training this Toe Ship up, also for double collection, and then I'm threatening the face with 6 damage next turn as well. This hand in particular, I think it would be beneficial staying here, because I also have the Fanatic. So in one turn I could go desert. I'd probably put the desert between the wells here, because I know that I'm going to get this land up here. But then I can go training next turn, Fanatic, and that lets me double collect and smash face for 6 already. So that's one advantage to not dashing and staying here. I would only do that if I have training in my hand, I think. Getting this double collection guaranteed is quite the strong play, and also just securing that Mystic Beast spot. One thing to keep in mind about doing that play of not dashing is that it does tell your opponent that you definitely have a training in hand. Otherwise, most players, I think, would go in between the wells. So if you stay here, just know that your opponent might expect a training line, so they might play around it by defending their face, or even investing a lot of resources into killing that Toe Ship. So if you are predicting this Toe Ship dying on that turn, I'd probably consider dashing in between the wells, because this is a much better land spot to begin with anyways. But that's all that I really want to say. Another good thing about Toe Ship is that if you draw Toe Ships in the future now, you have the option to go place that Toe Ship on this land and dash to the other side. If maybe you don't need this pressure, or maybe you really need to maintain collection. If you don't think that you can keep applying this pressure, you may want to try and set up another double collector on this side, which can also be strong if your opponent is investing a lot of resources in fighting you here. Then you can set up a double collector on the opposite side and just gain incredible value there while you're still fighting and still making efficient trades on this side. So let's get into a game now, and we'll see how this deck goes. Alright, so training's really nice to have opening hand. Don't like not having so many creatures, so I might redraw the Soul Drain. Yeah, we'll see what we get. Okay. So Fanatic Training is kind of nice in an opening hand. Let's use Zip the double collection. Go face. I'm pretty confident that he wouldn't have Choking Sand. It's not seen super often. On the other hand, I have no other creatures in hand. So maybe I want that to play around that still. Yeah, I think I will play my second desert. Because there are other options, like just Soul Drain. I don't know. Double Soul Drain still kills this, so it's not a huge consideration. Shaitan Demon. I'm pretty okay continuing my lands up here. Yeah, I mean, maybe Lake was fine, and then Desert. Altar of Souls. That's annoying. Yikes. So I wanted to training and move and kill this as soon as possible, but that won't be such a line for us. Could still do that type of line and kill the Imperial Guard. This brings us down to 2 attack. Yeah. I'm gonna want the second lake as well. Maybe I go this side actually. Yeah, I like that a bit better. So we'll skirt across the map. And then we take over his collection on the left side, which is pretty nice. Playing that lake just plays around Soul Drain so that I give that extra 1 life to my guy. So here I do have the option to Humbling and kill this, step on his land, and then I get a Mystic Beast spot. I quite like that. It's an expensive removal, but I think for this turn it's quite worth it. And then we can clear this Altar of Souls. A Wind Soldier. I think I still go for that same line. Drop Mystic Beast. We won't be able to collect this turn, but that's okay. Starting to set up some aggression on this left side. Wind Soldier is quite nice for that shadow that comes down. Keeping this demon alive is also kind of helpful because he'll keep hitting himself in the face. Weeping Idol. He will hit himself for 4. So he's technically at 8 life right now. Could use this Explorer to hit into this. Jump over and hit face. Could also use my Wind Soldier to clear this Weeping Idol. I'll have to build this desert, but I think that's okay to deny him that Faeria. Like, this denies him quite a lot of Faeria. I think I'm okay with that. And this will die, but I think that I'm okay with that as well. So deny his Faeria. Soul Drain, okay. Oh, another Altar of Souls is not what I want to see. Soul Drain is what I want to see. So I'll ship this to the other sides so that I can double collect. It's just a matter of which one of these lands I want. Probably fine with this land here. Yeah, this gives me options to like step back if things get a little sketchy over here. So Mystic Beast Drain can come here. His life's running a little small, so he's not going to be able to hit this in too much. He could have Radiance, but he is only on 2 cards. So Radiance is 1 card. Even if he does play Radiance, that will only heal him by 2, so yeah, that's pretty nice. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. That gives you a little bit of an insight into the tempo archetype. So this is blue-yellow tempo, but of course there are other tempo decks in other colors as well. It's sort of just a mix of hitting face and controlling creatures a little bit. You kind of alternate back and forth. If there are good trades that you can make with creatures, then you'll want to take those trades. But a large priority is put on hitting face. Definitely control the board where it's necessary, and just be aggressive with this deck. That's what it's all about. So I hope you enjoy playing with this deck. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.